All right. So thank you all so much for taking the time to listen in. I'm Emma Wheeler. I'm the school psychologist at Waccamaw High School and one of your presenters today. And then we also have Chelsea Simmons, who is the school psychologist at Waccamaw Middle and Waccamaw Intermediate, and also the lead psychologist for the school district. So we're here to talk about suicide prevention and the SOS Signs of Suicide program. So just a friendly reminder, this is intended to be a parent training only and is not meant for students. So our district has invested in the SOS program for all of our middle and high schools. Last year, Waccamaw High and Waccamaw Middle were the first schools to implement it, and it went really well. We're excited to continue this program with our students, and I hope by the end of this training, you will be too. So at the end, we'll open it up for questions if anyone has any, and we'll also put our contact information if you'd like to contact me or Chelsea directly. I want to acknowledge that suicide prevention is a tough topic to learn about. So parents in our community have lost children to suicide, and our teenagers have lost their friends and classmates. Mental illness and suicide have impacted most of us in our lives in some way. I understand that talking about suicide can be stressful and even scary. As a psychologist, talking about suicide isn't easy for me either. So if you need to take a break, feel free to pause this and come back to it when you're ready. And remember, if you're struggling with your mental health, there are community resources available. The same text and talk lines we give to our teenagers are also free and confidential for adults. It is important that you take care of yourself. As parents, we cannot pour from an empty cup.
So what we intend to cover tonight are ways that you can help your child potentially save a life. So we'll discuss youth suicide prevention basics, the new school protocol of ACT, which stands for Acknowledge, Care, and Tell, and what to do when your child acts. We will share ways to help your child build coping skills and leave you with resources to learn more. We want to be clear that we are not expecting parents, students, or teachers to become mental health experts or counselors. But just like someone who is not in a medical profession can learn to save a life through CPR, you and your child can learn to save a life by knowing how to act.
So suicide is a complicated act. After a suicide, we often wonder why. But the truth is there's never one clear answer. Every individual has a complex mix of factors that could lead them to think about suicide. But we do know that the presence of certain risk factors increase a young person's chances of thinking about suicide. One big factor is mental illness. So the majority of people who die by suicide have a mental health disorder, most commonly depression. So these mental health conditions are treatable, but many kids struggle without getting the right help. So when depression goes untreated, a young person may begin to feel so hopeless that they consider suicide. Depression can be hard to see. It doesn't always look like a sad mood. For teenagers, depression may present as being irritable, apathetic, unmotivated, or engaging in risky behaviors. Which brings us to another common factor, substance abuse. So many young people who struggle with depression also struggle with alcohol and/or drug use. So teenagers in general can struggle with decision making. So when you add drugs or alcohol to the mix, it can lower inhibitions, which may lead a teen to act impulsively on a suicidal thought that they may not have sober. Feeling isolated and hopeless are also risk factors for suicide. And these are big concerns, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. People have felt socially isolated and alone, and like things may never be normal again. Another factor that research has shown to increase the likelihood of suicide is access to guns. Suicidal crises are often short-term, but having access to a firearm can make it easy to carry out the act in an instant. To reduce suicide risk, if you choose to keep a gun in your home, keep it locked, unloaded, and lock and store ammunition separately. Finally, another risk factor is having thoughts about suicide. When someone thinks about suicide, it's not necessarily that they want to die. Instead, the person is trying to solve the problem of intense emotional pain and hopelessness. People generally don't want to die. They want the pain to stop, which is why it's so important to learn about the risk factors and warning signs of suicide so we can get teens the help they need quickly before they're in a crisis.
There are also many areas that we can intervene before someone reaches the point of considering suicide. When young people get treatment for depression or substance use, they can begin to feel much better. They can learn to develop healthy habits to manage negative feelings. Building connections to peers and adults, as well as healthy coping skills, can buffer young people during difficult times. Since guns are a leading factor in successful suicide attempts, it's very important to limit young people's access to these. Responsible ownership includes controlling their use. Please keep all firearms locked and stored in a secure space. And finally, a sense of hope for the future is a cornerstone of suicide prevention.
So a huge part of suicide prevention is educating students about mental health and letting them know that it's okay to talk about it and it's okay to ask for help. So using the SOS Signs of Suicide program through a video and guided discussion, students will learn to identify warning signs of suicide and depression in a single class period. At the end of the session, students complete a 7-question screening for depression to further encourage help seeking and connect students at risk with trusted adults. The curriculum raises awareness about behavioral health and encourages students to act, acknowledge, care, tell when worried about themselves or their peers. So now we're going to watch a video trailer from the SOS program so you can get a glimpse of what your students will be seeing. So we're going to share the link in the chat. The video is actually going to look much clearer and the sound is going to be better if you click on that link and watch it yourself.
Yeah, great. So go to the chat.
Okay.
We're going to reshare the link.
So we're just going to share this link and then we'll also share that with the video recording so people can watch it on their own.
So,
okay. So if you're like we saw just with SOS, students will watch a similar video and they're going to engage in class discussion to learn to act, to acknowledge, to care, and to tell. So your child's going to learn to acknowledge the signs of depression and suicide in themselves or a friend, show their friend that they care, and then tell a trusted adult about their concerns. So parents are an important part of this message because you're going to be the trusted adult in your children's lives. So your teen is likely to come to you about concerns they have for themselves or a friend, which is why it's important that we're proactive and talk about mental health openly and without shame, just like we do our physical health. As parents, we don't want the first conversation we have about mental health to be when our child is in a crisis. Talking about suicide can feel scary, but if it's intimidating for you to bring it up to your child as an adult, imagine how hard it might be for a teen to share with you that their friend or themselves is thinking about suicide. We as adults have to be the first ones to start to have these courageous conversations.
The underlying basis for this program is that most people give clues that they're thinking about suicide. This allows for an opportunity to intervene. That's why it's important that we learn to recognize and acknowledge warning signs. These are the signs that your students will learn to identify through video and discussion in the classroom. Anger or uncharacteristic irritability, big changes in behavior like withdrawal from friends and family, express hopelessness, significant changes in sleep patterns, sleeping all the time or not at all, drinking and or drug use, overwhelming pain, whether physical or emotional, and of course, talking about suicide. It is important for parents to know these signs as well.
So through SOS, students will be learning about the power of listening to their friends and showing that they care. Students will learn to use simple phrases to show that they care and then just listen. As parents, we need to do the same. We have to react calmly and be accepting. It is important that we listen to our kids without interruptions or judgments. It is important that we show empathy and never downplay their feelings or overreact to what is shared. As a parent, we might be thinking, why are you depressed? I've worked so hard to give you this great life. But in a crisis moment, it's really important that we validate a teen's feelings and struggles while emphasizing that help is available and that they can feel better.
So SOS encourages students to reach out and tell a trusted adult. We're going to be encouraging students to think about the adults in the school and out of the school that they can turn to in times of distress. As a parent, there's a good chance that you could be the trusted adult that your child might come to.
So after SOS, your child may want to talk to you about themselves or a friend. You might also be a trusted adult to your children's friends as well. If your child is concerned about a friend, you as a parent should listen to their concerns and assist them in seeking help. You can contact their friends' parents directly if you have their information and share your child's concerns. You can also contact the school mental health staff, administration, or guidance counselors. So they can help support the child and the family. If they are concerned about a child's immediate safety, it may be appropriate to call 911. Reassure your child that they did the right thing by telling you. Teens are often worried that their friends may be mad at them for sharing a secret. Explain to them that their friend may be upset initially, but in the long run, they will most likely be grateful that they cared enough to help and get them help. Ultimately, it is better to temporarily lose a friendship than it is to permanently lose a friend. If you're worried about your own child, reach out to their pediatrician, guidance counselor, or school. You can also use the call and text lines that offer free 24/7 support. In the case of a true emergency, it's important that you call 911 to get help right away.
So as we mentioned, we know that this is a difficult conversation, but you don't need to be an expert or to have all the answers. Give yourself permission to be human. Acknowledge that it is common to feel really uncomfortable with this topic at times. Talk to a supportive person before and afterwards. And most importantly, never keep what you learned a secret.
Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, over the last few years, teens have had limited social interactions, more screen time, irregular sleeping habits, and less physical activity. While many teens are happy to get back in school and returning to normal life, this has been a difficult transition for many others. Normal doesn't really feel normal anymore for many students. There has been a rise in mental health problems in both teens and adults. As parents, it's important that we work with our child to figure out ways that we can stay connected. At home, you can encourage your child to be a part of a club or a sport that they enjoy. You can make fun activities part of your daily and weekly routine. And that can be something as simple as having a movie night at home or cooking a new recipe together. And most importantly, have open communication about feelings and struggles. Teens need to know that we are here to listen without judgment if they want to talk.
You can help build your child's coping skills as well. These are not only good for them, but they're good for yourself. Coping skills are things that we do to manage negative feelings. Some of the most common and effective coping skills are exercise, journaling, talking to friends and family about stressors, and listening to music. I encourage you to think about what your child's coping skills might be. It could be playing or snuggling with the family pet, escaping into a great book or a TV series, or getting competitive in sports or games. There are all kinds of healthy coping skills that help us manage stressors. Help your child find healthy coping skills and help yourself as well.
As parents, we encourage you to have open conversations about mental health with your teens. An online survey in 2020 found that 82% of teens want to talk more openly and honestly about mental health. Stigma can make someone with a mental health problem be fearful to ask for help. As adults, we can help normalize the conversation and fight the negative stigma attached to mental illness by letting teens know it's okay to talk about mental health. We can make teens feel more comfortable talking about mental health by asking open-ended questions in a caring, non-judgmental way that shows you want to understand what they're going through rather than just interrogate them. Try to keep your questions simple and ask one at a time. Listen carefully to their answers and give them time to respond. Focus on understanding their feelings and perspective. We can also take time to really listen to our teens instead of rushing to solve their problems. Rather than give advice, help your teen come up with their own plan of how to handle their emotions or deal with a problem. Remind them of their strengths and other difficult obstacles they have overcome. It's okay to guide them and give some suggestions, but make sure they feel like they're part of the process rather than you just telling them what they need to do or trying to fix it for them. And finally, as parents, you can make sure your child knows you are available to talk and keep continuing the conversation about mental health at home.
So sometimes we struggle with the actual words to say when it comes to talking about suicide, but rest assured that asking somebody about suicide will not put the idea in their head. Instead, it lets them know that you can see how much pain they're in and that you want to help. If you're concerned that your child might be thinking about suicide, that alone will likely create anxiety and you might feel or be afraid of addressing it, but you can. You can ask indirectly by asking something like, do you have thoughts like wishing you could go to sleep and never wake up again? Or you can ask directly, like, have you been having thoughts of hurting yourself or suicide? This is a difficult conversation no matter what. If it's too difficult to have the conversation alone, enlist help. Ask another parent, ask a relative or your school counselor, your pediatrician, the National Helpline to support you in talking to your child.
Talking to teens about mental health can definitely be a challenge. Sometimes it can feel forced or even awkward, but there are ways to make it easier. If your teen has expressed that they want to talk about something, let them lead the discussion or even have a family meeting. Bringing up a tough topic during a video or board game can make it feel less intense. If depression or suicide comes up in a movie or the news, use it as a natural opportunity to talk about. Talking about mental health when you're on a walk or a drive can take some of the pressure off because you don't have to feel forced to maintain constant eye contact. And finally, having little conversations about mental health on a regular basis is easier and more effective than trying to cram it all into one big talk. Finally, if your teen does not want to talk about mental health, don't take it personally. You can keep trying, and you can also get other trusted adults like an aunt or uncle or grandparent to help.
Okay, so let's look at some action steps that you can take from our meeting today. First, look for the warning signs and acknowledge them and seek help immediately if you see them. Second, help build coping skills and positive supports for your child and for you. And lastly, talk to your child about suicide. This new program is a good reason to start the conversation. And be ready to listen when and if your child acts. Remember, ACT, acknowledge, care, and tell.
So it's really important that parents, schools, and communities work together to support students and prevent suicide. So as you can see by this graph, suicide is the second leading cause of death for teenagers in the United States, falling only behind accidents. Unfortunately, over the past 20 years, youth suicide rates have slowly increased. During the same time, as you can see, youth car accidents have dramatically decreased. So take a moment to think about the steps that we've taken as a society to prevent car accident deaths. So things like safer cars, safer roads, teen driver education programs, no texting laws. These are all things that we as a society implemented to prevent teen deaths. So we have to work together to prevent suicide as well. One thing I really like about the SOS program is that it teaches parents, teachers, and students to use the same language and to talk about mental health in a positive way and seek help. It's essential that educators and parents work together to watch for warning signs and connect at-risk students with the right resources. That old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, is so true. And it also takes the community working together to keep children safe from suicide and end the stigma of mental health. If you as a parent are concerned about your child or one of their friends, please tell someone. Reaching out to your child's guidance counselor or pediatrician are great places to start if you have any concerns for their mental health.
So this is a great website, and parents can access this page to learn more about youth suicide prevention. There's sample SOS student videos, and you can take an online mental health training on behalf of your child. This is a great resource to learn more about the program and how we're going to implement it, and to go back if you have any questions. So I'm going to take you a moment, like a little moment now, to give you guys time to write down the web address, or you can copy and paste in a new tab so you can check it out afterwards. But you see it's sossignsofsuicide.org/parent.
So in summary, the best way teachers and parents can safeguard teens' well-being and safety is to act, to acknowledge, care, tell. If you are seeing warning signs of mental health problems, acknowledge them to yourself and your teen. Talk to your teen in a caring way that lets them know you want to listen and can get them help. Finally, tell a professional. It is easy to write off symptoms of mental health problems to your child just being a moody teenager, but it's important that we don't brush off warning signs. If your child is having symptoms of a physical health problem, there is a point where you as a parent know that it's more than growing pains or a cold, and you take your child to a medical professional. You have to do the same for mental health concerns. Your child's school counselor or pediatrician are good places to start. If a concern comes up after business hours, there are free 24/7 crisis call and text lines. And if you ever have immediate safety concerns for your child, you can take them to an ER or call 911.
So that's kind of the meat of the presentation, but these are some frequently asked questions. So Emma and I are going to answer them. And if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to add those to the chat box or reach out to either of us. We're going to put our emails up later. First question, have teachers received their own version of SOS training? And the answer to that is yes. Both Waccamaw High School and Waccamaw Middle School teachers this year received the SOS training last week.
So when will SOS student training start? So Waccamaw Middle School will be providing the program to 7th grade classes in November and December. So Waccamaw High School will be providing the program to select 9th and 10th grade classes next semester, starting towards the end of January and continuing on. So you'll be notified directly if your child's classroom has been selected to participate in the SOS program through a parent letter.
Who delivers the SOS program? So the program is delivered by SOS team members who have been trained to deliver the program. The program is delivered by 2 people. One person presents the program and the other person facilitates a group discussion and monitors student reactions. In most cases, it's a school psychologist or RBHS counselor. School counselors will also be ones delivering the programs. School counselors, teachers, and administrators may serve as a facilitator.
So how will I know if my child is participating in the SOS program this school year? So your child will receive a student letter to bring home if their class is selected to receive the program this school year. You can also email Chelsea or myself, and we can let you know for sure if your child's class has been selected once the schedules are finalized. So Waccamaw Middle School already has a full schedule developed, and Waccamaw High School is still in the process of creating theirs.
How do I opt out of my child participating in SOS? If you do not want your child to participate in SOS this school year, email myself, Emma, or your school's principal. Some students who have a personal or family history of depression or suicide may not feel comfortable participating in the program, and that is perfectly okay. Just let us know if your child does not want to participate as soon as possible so we can arrange a plan and an alternative activity for them on the day that their class is designated to receive the SOS.
So why can't large groups of students participate in the SOS program all at once? So it's recommended that the SOS program is delivered in small groups of students and that they should be no more than 25 students at a time. And the reason for this is that the small groups allow for meaningful class discussion, close monitoring of student reactions, and same-day follow-up with students who request to speak to a school staff member about concerns that they may have for themselves or a friend.
Can I request that my child receive SOS this school year? If you would like to participate in SOS this school year, and you want your child to do so, you can email myself or Emma and let us know. We cannot guarantee that your child will receive it, but we can certainly try to arrange their participation. Following the SOS implementation guidelines, we're slowly growing SOS in our schools to ensure that we deliver this program with integrity and fidelity.
So will SOS continue next school year? Absolutely. Every middle and high school already has a license to use this program for the year, and we intend to continue this program for years to come. Suicide prevention can't just be a one-time training. We intend to continue the conversation and make mental health awareness a part of our school culture in the Georgetown County School District.
So what is the screening my child will take at the end of the SOS program? So following the video, students will complete a response slip, which asks whether they would or not they would like to talk to an adult about any concerns. School staff will conduct brief meetings with any student asking to talk. Students will also complete a 7-question screening called the Brief Screen for Adolescent Depression. This tool does not provide a diagnosis of depression, but does indicate whether a young person should be referred for an evaluation by a mental health professional. The screening will indicate if it's unlikely, possible, or likely that your child is having symptoms of depression. All screenings will be reviewed by school mental health staff, and students will be identified at risk and will be followed up with that day. You will be contacted by the school if your child's screening indicates that they may need additional support or an evaluation.
So will I be notified if my child's screening indicates they have a significant amount of symptoms of depression? So yes, so if your child expresses concerns about themselves or is identified as being at risk for depression or suicide, you will be notified that same day. So we'll work with you to develop a plan to support your child at school and get them the help that they need. We can explain what services are offered through the school and also give you resources to access community-based mental health services if needed.
And so lastly, when will school staff follow up with students who request to talk to somebody after the training? We will follow up with students who express the desire to talk about a member with to a staff member the same day as they receive the training. So myself, Emma, our BHS counselors, and or the school counselors will be the staff members following up with the students who request it.
So thank you all so much for listening. I hope that after this training, you feel more comfortable about talking about mental health with your teen and knowing how to act if you have a concern. Nobody knows your child better than you. As parents, you play an important role in youth suicide prevention. As a community, we can all work together to support our teens and ensure every student has a trusted adult to turn to. Chelsea and I's contact information is up. So feel free to ask questions now, or you can send us, call us, or email us with any questions or concerns or ideas that you have. All right, so the floor is open if anyone has any questions. And you can also use the chat box if you're more comfortable. So at this point, I'm going to stop the recording and we're going to stay on for just a minute in case anyone has any questions.